I love horror. Films, TV shows, books, but if you ask me, nothing quite beats the true terror of a horror video game. And there's been no shortage of greats over the years, from the original Alone in the Dark, Silent Hill, all the way through to games like Amnesia and the Dead Space series. Every Halloween, I dive into Steam and look for a new game to scare me senseless. But this year, I noticed something a little strange. When I went under the horror tag on the store and sorted by user reviews to discover the best of the best, I noticed I didn't recognize the majority of the games. Have we discovered a hidden trove of terrifying tales, or are Steam user reviews just rubbish? I thought I'd go through the supposedly best top 25 horror games, not bundles or DLC, just games, on Steam to ask, are they any good? And more importantly, are they scary? Welcome to the Steam 25 Horror. Sat at the number 8 position is Resident Evil 2, the recent remake of the 1998 classic. Playing as either Leon Kennedy or Claire Redfield, you'll fight your way through the zombie-infested Raccoon City, trying to find the source of the infection while avoiding the many, seemingly unkillable horrors stalking the police station you'll call home. Right from the get-go, I never played the original Resident Evil 2. This was my first time experiencing the story, enemies, and locations. As such, this is very much just a discussion on this game, not how it stacks up to the original, just it, as a horror game. The game also takes some pretty wild turns as it progresses, so I've tried to keep most of the footage just from the first half of the game. But don't worry, I have played all the way through. 3 times actually, which might be a bit of a spoiler over how I feel about this game. So, is it any good? Right from the get-go, the game makes one thing very clear. These zombies don't go down easy. Some of the larger weapons, if well aimed, might be able to take them out quickly, but most require a handful of bullets to put down, something you very rarely have to hand. Instead, you'll spend most of the game avoiding zombies, trying to preserve your very limited ammo. Movement in the game is clunky, in a good way. Your character doesn't zoom around the map, has to slow down to shoot, has to hold still for even longer in order to get a good aim, and even takes their sweet time turning around. In a different game this would be infuriating, but here it really helps to play into the survival horror feeling of the game. You always feel underpowered. You aren't a zombie-killing badass, but a rookie cop who takes his sweet time to fire. The style of movement also forces you to consider every shot. You have to stop and aim every time. No shooting from the hip or while sprinting away. Every close encounter with an enemy forces you to debate between just trying to move past them or turn, stop, and shoot, allowing them and others to get closer. There's a wide variety of weapons in the game. Leon and Claire both play the same, but get a different assortment of weapons. The weapons, for the most part, all feel like they pack a punch. The visuals play a large part in that. But they're almost deliberately varying in power. They aren't balanced. The shotgun with a few upgrades is a lifesaver, while Leon's starting pistol never feels like the ideal weapon. It's here that the minimal distribution of ammo plays a key role. You'll be forced to use every weapon at your disposal, as you frequently run out of ammo for one and have to throw over to the next. The debate goes from just, should I run or engage, to, do I want to waste a bullet from a good gun, or waste a handful from a bad one? For a zombie horror, it's surprisingly strategic. So you've got your bullets and guns, but that's only half the battle. The other side of the game is movement and puzzles. Not complex puzzles, more you find a valve and have to figure out where it goes, leading you to another item to find a place for, all slowly unlocking more of the police station. It does wonders to keep the pace up, whilst also familiarizing you with the station. The challenge of these items is the inventory. Between guns, bullets, crafting items, and the rare healing items, you might not have any room left. Very often I'd be finding items I needed to progress and having to throw out a useful item in order to get it. The restrictive inventory does 3 great things. 1, it adds to that feeling of being underpowered. You can't stock up on hundreds of items and bullets. 2, it encourages forward movement. Once you find a key item, rather than keep exploring, you want to go use it, get a new area, and get it out of your inventory. Thirdly, most importantly, it encourages exploration. You can get weapon and inventory size upgrades, not massive ones, but helpful ones. Almost all of these are entirely optional. You could get through the whole game without finding any. Indeed, at the end of my playthroughs, there were entire weapons I hadn't found. These upgrades are where the game can flex its puzzle muscles a little more. Again, they often aren't challenging, but require you to read through notes, check rooms carefully, and backtrack through dangerous areas of the station. It's a clever way of encouraging you to take risks without forcing them on you. The gameplay is solid, purposely designed to feel restricted and limited, forcing you to make split-second tough decisions at every turn. It's a system designed for a horror game, and it works wonders here. The visuals here are gorgeous. In a game that involves moving through the same rooms multiple times, having these rooms ooze atmosphere helps to avoid it becoming repetitive. Each room tells a story, not just in the notes left, but in the visual clues left over. The positions of bodies, the way rooms have been blocked off. The station feels not alive, but feels like it was lived in. As you explore, you can almost feel the stories of the officers who were here before trying to hold the place together. Leon and Claire, as well as all the primary human characters, look great, but the real star here is the monsters. The basic zombies especially. Every bullet is made to feel incredibly satisfying through the dynamic way the zombies respond to them. The way bullets rip away at their skin and clothes, leaving them looking more monstrous as they come towards you, is incredible. It makes shooting enemies in other games feel entirely unresponsive. We'll leave most of the sounds till later, but the score here also does a great job of flowing in and out as needed. For long stretches as you go down dark corridors, the game is entirely devoid of it, leaving you to listen out for every bang and creak that could indicate something's coming. In the bombastic boss fights, the score picks up, or in chase moments it comes back with speed and tempo that just leaves you stressed. Exactly the sort of feeling you want in a close chase. As mentioned, you can play through the story as Leon or Claire. The difference isn't huge, but is notable. You'll still go through the station, still end up in the same area. Most of the maps you traverse are largely the same, but presented in different orders with different puzzle solutions. There are some key differences. Claire's story is the more emotional of the two. You spend more time outside on the streets helping a small child, while Leon's is often more enclosed, with more of an espionage feel. The stories both certainly have ups and downs. Both, though Leon's especially, often play like 80s action movies, with cheesy dialogue and quips. Indeed, the relationship between Leon and Claire is enjoyable, but they seem to have the bond of two best friends within a scene of meeting each other. For the first 2/3 of the story, this is largely fine. Interactions with characters are rare, and these moments can feel like some nice breaks from the terror going on around you. There are a couple of moments where the game tries to get serious, and these can range from very effective to utterly ridiculous. The entire third act of both stories also feels like it falls entirely into the ridiculous. I was hooked enough to keep playing, but the later areas aren't nearly as horrific or indeed interesting as the early ones. The characters start to fully lean into the cheese, and by the end both have become middling action movies. While the story itself starts to sag, the pacing remains fairly strong. Every time you start to become familiar with an area, the game introduces a new enemy, or a whole new area that shakes things up. For as goofy as the end gets, it's always at least moving. The pace, combined with the first 2/3 of the story, should keep you playing right through, even if you do start to raise an eyebrow at the insanity on screen. But, is it scary? Like all the games I look at here, I switched all the lights off, plugged in some headphones, and really set the mood to spooky, to give the game the best shot it could at making me shiver. So, is it scary? Yes. Before we really get into this though, I think it's important to mention a typical challenge in horror: the third act. Be it movie, TV show, or game, a great deal of horror really struggles to land the ending, often more so than other genres. There are a few key reasons, the big one just being understanding. Part of the early fear in horror is the unknown. What are we up against? And/or what is it capable of? How will our characters defeat whatever lurks in the shadows? That works wonderfully up until that third act. Here we start to get the answers, and with the answers often away goes our fear. We know what we're up against. We know what it can do. We can imagine ways to defeat it. The terror of the unknown is lost as it becomes, well, known. Resident Evil 2 is a great game. The horror elements are here, they're great, but they very much suffer from this drop-off. While, even on my second and third playthroughs, I still had some great scares, they weren't even close to the fear in the opening 2/3 of my first playthrough. This horror section is going to be based on that first play. However, it's worth noting, like a lot of horror, the game struggles to remain quite as horrifying from the third act onwards. Once you've gotten good at shooting zombies and know exactly how to avoid them, they just stop being quite as terrifying. From everything mentioned in the gameplay section, I'm sure the horror elements of the game are clear. The zombies are creepy, stumbling around making it hard to hit, while coming apart in gory ways. Seeing even one zombie at the end of a corridor can be terrifying, as you know you have to take him down, but might not have the health or bullets to do it confidently. These moments where you move around low on health searching for bullets are where the game's at its most horrific. The other enemies in the game all manage to force new terror on you in different ways, through speed or strange movement. It's a game that very rarely ever lets you feel safe. You always feel like you could be one bad call from death. It's tense and horrifying. The sounds play a huge role here. The zombies banging on the windows or the sounds of the liquor make it feel like the creatures could pop up around any corner. The soundscape is often quite minimal, which only serves to make these sounds pop out more. The station is always creaking, but never noisy enough to feel alive. Walking through a room and suddenly hearing something pounding on the door knowing it's about to break, while hearing a moan from behind you, is the kind of organic scare the game creates masterfully through its sound. Then, of course, there is the sound of boots. If you know anything about this game, you'll probably have noticed I haven't mentioned one big, hulking part of this game. Mr. Eggs. Mr. Eggs is a giant grey monster who arrives in the game at a point where you might just be starting to feel confident in the map, only to destroy that confidence and spin the game on its head again. No matter what playthrough, the sound of his boots approaching remains terrifying. Mr. X is unstoppable. He appears in the game, then stalks you around the map. Even if you manage to lose him, he'll patrol the station searching for you. Make any loud noises and he'll be coming for you. Whenever Mr. X spots you, the score chips in with some fast chase music, and you'll have to leg it out of there. He's terrifying. No action in the station feels safe. Everything feels like it has to be done in a hurry, yet with extreme caution to avoid him finding you. And the sound of his boots as he marches around, letting you know he's close, only adds to the terror as you spin in place trying to figure out where he is, only for him to burst out at you. So yes, Resident Evil 2 is scary. Even without Mr. X, the game has a wonderfully creepy atmosphere, and the enemies and restrictions on health and ammo leave every step feeling tense. The enemies are creepy and come apart in gory ways. The scares are almost entirely organic, and arise through playing, so you never feel safe. And when you throw Mr. X in there, the game becomes a wonderful soup of split-second decisions, frantic chases, and pure, unrelenting horror. Would I recommend it? Yes. While the campaign isn't insanely long, the 2 different campaigns, as well as second run and difficulty options, mean you get plenty of time for your money. The visuals and sound are great. The gameplay is peak survival horror, forcing you to care and hunt for every pickup. While it does fall to action by the end of the story, it's still fun and engaging, and still entirely worth it for the stellar opening 2/3. As horror, yes, Mr. X will haunt your dreams, and you'll spend the next few days checking your roofs for lickers. It's tense, creepy, and unrelenting. I'll say it again, it's peak survival horror, and you should definitely play it. Here's where it falls in the ranking table. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, a comment, and hey, maybe even subscribe. Hope this was helpful, and look forward to seeing you next week with the next in the Steam 25 Horror. See you then.